Hey there. Tonight, we're heading back, not to castles or kingdoms, but to the dust-choked trails, sun-bleached plains, and half-forgotten corners of the American West. You'll ride the life of a cowboy, from youth to old age. You'll face long drives, cold nights, stampedes, bandits, bad beans, and the kind of loneliness that clings harder than trail dust. If this kind of storytelling helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it actually brings you peace. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always strangely comforting to see who else is drifting off to the same quiet story. Also, if you'd like to support my work and want to listen without ads, check out the Patreon link in the description. It helps keep the campfire burning. So, dim the lights. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Settle in and let's begin at the very start of a cowboy's life. You're 17 when the word comes down. Word travels slow out here, slower than a horse with a limp. But this one reaches you fast enough. They're hiring riders, cowboys, men who can stay upright in a saddle and don't spook easy. Men who can follow a herd north through territory that hasn't seen a fence post, let alone civilization. You're not sure if you qualify, but no one else in your family has a better plan, and your options are either the trail or the plough. And the plough's got a way of turning boys into old men before their time. So you ride into town on your father's mule, wearing boots that belonged to your cousin until he outgrew them or died. You can't remember which. The hiring man doesn't ask many questions. Can you ride? Yes. Can you shoot? Sure. Ever worked cattle? Not yet, but how hard can it be? He squints at you, shrugs, and writes your name with a stick of charcoal on the back of a tobacco label. You're in. That night, you sleep in a lopsided barn behind the saloon, with your head on a saddlebag and a few splinters in your thigh. There's snoring from a few bunks over, men already signed on for the drive, and somewhere outside, a horse whinnies in protest. You roll over, not realising you've just agreed to several months of saddle sores, half-cooked beans, and the kind of sunburn that peels in sheets. By dawn, you're on your feet, boots heavy with dew and regret. The others are already saddling up. There's a rhythm to the work. Tighten the cinch, check the bridle, mount up without groaning too loudly. You're handed a rope and told to help gather the remuda, which sounds like a kind of disease until someone points out the horses. Your mount is a lean, ugly gelding with one ear permanently tilted to the side. You name him Lefty, mostly so you've got someone to talk to later. Training, if you can call it that, is hands-on. A seasoned rider shows you how to sit loose in the saddle, how to ride with your knees instead of your backside, and how to keep your hat from flying off without nailing it to your scalp. You practice swinging a lasso, mostly succeeding in knotting your own ankles. No one laughs. Not out loud, anyway. It's too early in the drive for anyone to waste the energy. Your trail boss is a man named Gaines. Thick moustache, eyes like dry creek beds, and a voice that sounds like it's been boiled in coffee. He doesn't smile much, but he can roll a cigarette with one hand while steering a horse with the other. You learn quickly that when he says ride, you ride. When he says quiet, you shut your mouth. And when he says stampede, you pray. The first few days are a blur of motion and dust. The cattle are skittish, the horse is stubborn, and the heat relentless. You ride for miles without seeing a tree tall enough to provide shade or a stream clear enough to trust. Water is rationed, so is conversation. Most of what's said are grunts, whistles, and the occasional curse when a steer breaks formation. You start to understand why cowboys aren't known for long speeches. Your hands toughen, your thighs ache, and your appetite shifts from selective to indiscriminate. Anything Cookie serves, you eat, even if it looks like it fought back once. Breakfast is coffee and biscuits so dry you could shingle a roof with them. Supper is beans, maybe with a whisper of bacon if luck's on your side. You learn to eat fast and sleep faster. Sleep, when it comes, isn't restful. You lie under the stars, wrapped in a blanket that's never quite enough. Boots tucked under your head so they don't wander off in the night. The wind howls, coyotes yap in the distance, and once or twice you swear you hear something slithering near your bedroll. You don't move. If it's your time, it's your time. At least you won't die with clean boots. By the end of the first week, you've stopped questioning your choices. Not because they make sense, but because there's no going back. You've learned to ride half asleep, eat half-cooked meat, and ignore half your body's complaints. You've also learned how to sit in a saddle long enough for it to become part of you, or for your bones to forget what softness ever felt like. Your companions are as varied as the cattle you trail. There's Dobbs, who chews tobacco like it's a sacrament. There's Red, who speaks only when the sun's down and sings to the cattle like they're his children. And then there's young Jesse, even greener than you, who dreams aloud about marrying a banker's daughter and opening a hotel. No one tells him the odds. Every cowboy has a reason for riding. Some are running from things, others are running toward them. Most, like you, are just riding because the alternative involves a pickaxe or a boss with opinions. Out here, the only opinions that matter come from the man holding the reins or the steer with horns long enough to make you reconsider your life choices. As the days stretch into weeks, something shifts. The trail becomes routine. You stop checking the horizon every 5 minutes and start noticing the way the cattle group together when a storm's coming. You learn the sound of trouble, the wrong kind of silence, the sudden snap of a branch, the way the herd freezes just before chaos. You don't relax, not exactly, but you adapt. Then comes your first real scare. It might be a snake in your bedroll or a steer that gets spooked and bolts straight for Bermuda. Either way, your heart races, your horse stumbles, and you realize, fully and completely, that you are very small in a very big land, and that no one's coming to save you. Still, you stay, because by now, the trail is in your blood. The dust lives in your boots, the smell of cattle on your clothes. You start to speak like the others, short, direct, and with enough slang to confuse a school teacher. You've stopped trying to wipe the dirt off your face. It'll only be back in an hour. Some nights you dream of a bed, of clean sheets and walls that don't flap in the wind, of a door that locks and a floor that doesn't crawl. But then you wake to a sky so wide and quiet it almost forgives the misery beneath it. Almost. Occasionally someone drops out. A fever, a busted leg, a snake bite. You ride past the spot the next morning without saying much. You nod. Maybe someone spits. Then it's back to the herd. The trail doesn't stop for stories. In town, they'll romanticize this life. They'll imagine gunfights and dramatic showdowns, high noon duels and whiskey-scented vengeance. You'll hear them talk about cowboys like you're something out of legend. but you'll know the truth. It wasn't the bullets that broke most men. It was the boredom, the backaches, the stale biscuits, the loneliness that crept in between hoofbeats and grew louder at night. You weren't a hero. You were a man doing a job, one too rough for many and too pointless for most. And yet, when it's all said and done, when your pay is in your pocket, when the herd is behind you, and your boots hit the wooden floor of a saloon for the first time in months, you'll realise something strange. You miss it already. Not the beans, not the blisters, but the trail, the open sky, the feeling that you were going somewhere, even if that somewhere was just a few more miles of dust and silence. You'll ride again, because it's what you do, even if no one ever understands why. Your first real test comes before the sun. The herd's restless, snorting in the cool dark, their shadows twitching like smoke across the prairie. Gaines wakes you with the heel of his boot and a grunt. "Saddle up," he says, like he's asking you to tie your own noose. Your thighs still ache from yesterday's ride, and you can't quite remember if you dreamed of sleep or just dreamed of aching. Lefty stands a few feet away, chewing at something that may or may not be edible. You hobble over, more limping than walking, and begin the ritual. Blanket, saddle, cinch, stirrup check, and a half prayer that this time your left leg won't betray you. Because out here, the horse comes first. You ride well, or you ride home. Or more likely, you don't ride anywhere at all. Riding sounds simple enough. Sit tall, hold the reins, nudge the horse with your heels, and off you go. But by your third day on the trail, you know better. The saddle is a torture device in leather. The stirrups bite at your knees. And Lefty, bless his one-sided ears, has taken a particular joy in veering sharply left whenever your weight shifts wrong. You don't ride so much as cling, like a burr on a moving coat. Trail riding is something else entirely. It's not a parade. It's a long march with hooves. You ride to manage the herd, not to enjoy the breeze. The cattle move slow and stupid, always looking for a reason to split off, panic, or dig their heels into some patch of thorn brush you didn't see coming. And your job, rookie or not, is to stop them from wandering too far or bolting too fast. You learn quickly that there's an art to it. Not the romantic kind with galloping horses and wild gunfights, but the kind that takes weeks of pain to master and still leaves you sore. A good cowboy rides as much with his knees and instincts as he does with the reins. You keep your heels light in the stirrups, not just for comfort, but for survival. If your foot gets caught in the wrong moment, say, your horse throws you after spotting a jackrabbit, you're not just hitting the ground. You're being dragged through the brush like a forgotten bedroll. Lefty doesn't give you the benefit of the doubt. He tests you every morning. Will you mount clean? Will you pull the girth tight enough without pinching him? Can you ride without sliding sideways? On the best days, you manage to stay on. On the worst, you come back with blood on your shirt and mud in your ears. And Gaines, he doesn't coddle. He watches with a squint, nods when you stay mounted, and scowls when you don't. You ride like a man whose trousers are on fire, he mutters once. It's the closest thing to encouragement you've heard all week, but you adapt. Not because it gets easier, but because the alternative is worse. Every fall hurts a little less. Not because your bones are tougher, but because your expectations are lower. You start wearing your bruises like medals. One across your thigh from that mesquite bush. One on your ribs from that first spill. And one just above your pride from the time you dismounted and forgot you were still tied to the pack horse. Historically, few skills were more prized than horsemanship. The cowboy wasn't just a man on a horse. He was a man who became part of it. The western saddle, with its horn and deep seat, was designed for endurance, for long hours on uneven ground. You don't ride for an hour. You ride for 12, sometimes more, especially during a drive. And you're not alone. Cowboys across the West, many of them sons of farmers, freedmen, immigrants, or former Confederate soldiers, learned to ride out of necessity, not leisure. A day's ride could stretch 30 miles or more, across prairie, river, and ravine. If your horse went lame or threw a shoe, you were the one to fix it. And if you couldn't, well, you'd better be good at walking. Each cowboy usually had several horses in the remuda. A pool of spares rotated out daily. You learn to spot Lefty's moods, but you'll ride others too. Some are smooth, others have a mean streak. One they call Whiskey Jack throws riders for fun. Another Daisy is sweet enough, until lightning cracks, and she bolts like the devils on her tail. And then there's night riding. The cattle don't rest just because the sun sets. Someone's got to circle the herd, singing if needed, calming the animals with low sounds so they don't stampede at a snapping twig. You take a shift. It's dark, cold. Your hat doesn't block starlight or silence. You listen for anything wrong. The wrong shuffle. A grunt too sharp. Silence that stretches too long. Your voice cracks halfway through a lullaby you haven't heard since your mother sang it. Lefty flicks an ear. One step, then another. The herd stays calm. You stay awake. The boredom creeps in. Hours on a horse staring at the same dust, the same backsides of cows, the same slow stretch of earth. You talk to yourself. You talk to your horse. You count clouds. Some men start humming old songs. Some invent stories. Some don't say a word for days. But all of it, the aches, the saddle burns, the empty miles, feeds into something else. You're learning, slowly, painfully. You're learning to ride. And out here, if you don't ride, you don't survive. One morning, Gaines puts you near the point, just behind the lead steer, a position of responsibility and an easy way to mess things up. The point man sets the pace. If he rides too fast, the cattle tire. Too slow, and the drive drags. You find yourself watching every twitch of the lead steer's ears, like they're signals from a telegraph. The animal veers left. You gently push right. It slows. You ease back. Too much pressure, and it spooks. Not enough, and it wanders. This isn't herding. It's negotiation. That afternoon, a greenhorn on his first ride goes down hard after his saddle cinch slips. He gets back up, pale and shaken, limping like he's just survived a fall off a church steeple. No one mocks him, not openly. Everyone's been there. Everyone remembers their first hard lesson. He tightens the girth, mounts again, rides on. That's the unspoken rule out here. You get back on. Always. You ride with a cracked rib, a swollen ankle, a mouth full of dust. You ride with barely enough sleep to blink straight, because the trail doesn't wait, and Gaines doesn't make exceptions. And when the ride ends for the day, if the herd hasn't spooked and no one's broken a leg, you dismount, stretch legs that forgot they could, and help set camp. You rub down your horse before you eat, because he earned it. You lean against the saddle, and listen to the hiss of coffee water over fire, the shuffle of boots, the low murmur of tired men. No one thanks you for staying upright that day. There's no applause. Just one more night under the stars, and the knowledge that tomorrow you'll do it all again. A cowboy's skill isn't measured in flair. It's in resilience. In knowing when to push, when to ease, when to ride silent and when to sing. By the time you reach the next railhead, your seat is firm, your back is bent, and Lefty doesn't try to veer so much. He's learned you too. You've earned each other's tolerance, and somehow you've earned your pay. But the learning doesn't stop here. It never does. Because every trail has a new bend, every horse a new trick, and every ride another lesson to beat into your bones. This is the cowboy's education. No diploma, no praise, just another saddle, another sunrise, and the ride. You'll come to understand something most folks never will. A cowboy doesn't master the horse so much as surrender to it. You don't control the land, or the herd, or even your own schedule. You adapt, you ride, you listen. To the creak of saddle leather, to the wind across the plain, to the shifting rhythm of 1,000 hooves speaking some ancient, thunderous language only cowboys learn to hear. And long after the dust has washed off your face, long after you've traded trail grit for still air and a steady floor, you'll still walk with that sway in your step, like the saddle never left you. Because in a way, it didn't. You wake up with the taste of ashes in your mouth. Not metaphorical ashes. Real ones, blown into your face by the morning wind and stuck to last night's half-burned biscuit. Cookie's already got the fire going again, rattling his pans and cursing the wind like it's a personal enemy. The smell of boiling coffee drifts through the dust. It's bitter. It's strong. It's all you have to look forward to. Breakfast, such as it is, consists of cold beans, a hunk of bacon that smells slightly off, and the same biscuit you fell asleep chewing. Welcome to another day on the trail. This is cowboy cuisine, whatever doesn't rot first. Out here, your entire diet is controlled by the chuck wagon. It rolls along a few miles behind the herd, pulled by mules who probably hate this job as much as you do. Inside it, carefully packed between barrels of flour, sacks of beans, and maybe a sloshing jug of vinegar, is your next 2 months of nourishment. Cookie, the surly overlord of this mobile kitchen, guards it like a dragon guards treasure. And for good reason. Food is gold. But unlike gold, it sweats, it rots, and it attracts flies. Cowboy meals were designed not for pleasure, but for survival. Beans, always beans, are the staple. Packed with protein and easy to store, they're soaked and boiled over the fire until edible, or at least until you give up arguing with your gut. Flour makes biscuits, tough enough to use as doorstops, and dry enough to require a cup of boiling coffee per bite. Bacon, when available, is both a delicacy and a gamble. Salted beyond belief, it's kept in barrels, layered with grease and wrapped in cloth, turning pink and sour over time. You sniff each strip before cooking. If it doesn't fight back, you call it dinner. Spoilage is a daily enemy. The chuck wagon holds no ice, no cooler, no luxury. There's only shade, salt, and hope. Meat spoils quickly in the heat, and anything soft, bread, fruit, cheese, is gone within days of departure, if you were lucky enough to have it at all. And then there's the coffee. Coffee is the lifeblood of the cowboy. It's boiled until black, poured thick, and consumed in cups so dented you wonder if they've ever been washed. There's no cream, no sugar. If you're lucky, Cookie remembered not to strain it through the same cloth he used to clean the rifle. Still, it's a ritual. Even when you're half dead with exhaustion, you drag yourself to the fire for that cup. It's hot, it's strong, and it convinces you you're still alive. Just long enough to saddle up again. Cookie himself is a character out of myth, usually a bit older, with a limp or a missing finger. He's part chef, part medic, part therapist, and part tyrant. He rules the food, and by extension, the men. He decides when you eat, what you eat, and how fast you get it. You don't mess with Cookie. You don't complain about the biscuits. Not if you want to keep your portion. His tools are few. A battered Dutch oven, a blackened coffee pot, a couple of bean kettles, and an iron triangle to summon you like cattle. The chuck wagon holds his pantry, a mess of tin containers, flour sacks, lard tins, and jars of sourdough starter he guards with a zeal usually reserved for holy relics. That starter can make biscuits, flapjacks, even fry bread. It's a little living creature, bubbling in the corner, the only pet allowed on the trail. And if there's one thing Cookie knows, it's how to stretch a meal. He'll toss in dried apples when he can, or raisins if he hasn't eaten them himself. Prickly pear jelly sometimes makes an appearance, scraped together from cactus fruit, boiled over a fire, and strained through a hat. Once, Cookie made a cobbler with dried peaches and a biscuit crust that nearly made a man cry. It wasn't good, but it was different. And out here, different is close enough to divine. On especially unlucky days, dinner might include something unidentifiable. A possum, perhaps, or raccoon. Whatever wandered too close to camp and looked edible. Cookie won't tell you what it is. He'll just smile that toothless grin and call it trail meat. You eat it anyway. Once, after a heavy rain, the trail turned slick with mud and slowed the whole drive. Cookie took advantage of the delay and hunted rattlesnake. The stew that night had a strange texture, a bit rubbery and stringy. Someone asked what kind of beef it was. Cookie said, "The kind that hisses." No one asked again. The dangers of spoilage aren't just taste and texture. Food poisoning is real and deadly. Out here, diarrhea can kill you. A bad piece of meat or contaminated water could mean fever, cramps, and dehydration. And there's no doctor within 200 miles. If you go down, the herd moves on. They might leave you a canteen and a hat over your face. That's the trail way. And the worst part? You start to crave it. After weeks of eating the same gritty, salty, half-burned meals, you begin to find comfort in the routine. You miss the sound of beans boiling over the fire. You start looking forward to the exact moment when Cookie bangs that old triangle with a spoon, calling you in like a cow to feed. The cook himself is a strange sort of legend. Usually older than the rest, with a bad back and a good aim, Cookie's job is thankless but sacred. He sleeps apart, guards the food like it's gold, and knows how to cook a meal for 15 over a flame in a windstorm. Without him, you'd all starve. Or worse, be forced to cook for yourselves. Everything in the chuck wagon has its place. Flour sacks are hung high to avoid rodents. Meat is wrapped and salted in burlap. Tin cups dangle from hooks. Coffee pots, scorched black, are always ready. Tools are tied down, pans are stacked, and a wooden boot on the back holds the Dutch ovens like sacred relics. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you pass through a settlement with a general store, a rare opportunity for fresh supplies. Cookie might swap for a sack of real sugar, a tin of peaches, or a jar of pickled eggs. You'd sell a boot for that egg. But stores are few and far between, and most of what's on the shelves has already passed through the hands of 4 freight wagons, 3 months of travel, and 1 very disinterested mule. And even when you get to town, a proper meal is a gamble. That saloon steak might be yesterday's horse in a fresh coat of gravy. You ask how the beans are, and the barkeep says, "They've been warming since spring." You order anyway. You're desperate for something that doesn't taste like ash and hoof. In truth, it's not just food, it's the rhythm of the trail, the communal nature of the meal. You eat shoulder to shoulder with men who smell like horses and dust, who haven't bathed since the Red River, and who curse Cookie with the same affection you'd show a brother. The fire, the cracked enamel mugs, the hiss of boiling pots. This is the Cowboys' hearth, his dinner table, his chapel. You never quite stop being hungry. Not really. Your body adjusts, but there's a hollowness that stays. Some nights you dream of butter, other nights it's peaches, a hot loaf of bread, a stew with more than 2 ingredients, even a glass of milk. But when the triangle rings and Cookie hollers, "Come and get it," you run. Because in the Wild West, you eat whatever doesn't rot first. And if you're lucky, it doesn't bite back. You don't remember when the ride started. Not exactly. Maybe it was when the trail boss pointed north and said, "There." Or maybe it was the moment your boots left behind the last boarded floor and found dirt that hadn't seen a building in miles. Either way, that line between home and the trail has long since vanished beneath hoofprints, wagon ruts, and dust that tastes the same no matter where you go. The cattle stretch from horizon to horizon, 2,000 snorting, lowing, wall-eyed animals who don't care much for direction. You ride along their flanks, guiding, yelling, whistling, waving your hat. They don't listen. Not really. But they'll follow the others, and you follow them, and the whole mass drifts forward like a slow-moving flood. It's the same every day. Wake up stiff, brush off the dirt, drink coffee strong enough to peel paint, and saddle your horse in silence. No one talks much. No one needs to. You all know what's coming. Miles. Just miles. Dust, sagebrush, silence, and the endless press of sun and saddle. There's nothing theatrical about it. No saloons in sight. No jewels at high noon. Just the ceaseless grind of hooves and leather, cowhide and chapped skin. Hollywood never tells you about the boredom, the soul-deep sameness that turns even the most magnificent landscape into background noise. You cross plains that look like the ones before them. Ride along rivers that meander like lazy thoughts. Once, you pass an old wagon half swallowed by grass, its canvas shredded, its wheels splintered. A skeleton of some other story. You don't stop to wonder what happened. You just keep moving. Sometimes you ride point near the trail boss, eyes squinting at the barely there ruts left by herds before yours. Other days you ride flank, keeping strays from wandering off. The worst is drag. All dust, no dignity, where the dirt kicked up by 2,000 hooves lands straight in your lungs. You'll cough it out for days, maybe weeks. Your horse doesn't complain, but you feel him get slower. Not tired exactly, just resigned. You are too. He knows when to stop, when to veer, when to press forward without asking. He's a better partner than most men you've ridden with. Doesn't talk back, doesn't snore. The heat comes early. It burns the dew off the grass before breakfast's even cooled. Your neck's already red, your shirt already stiff with sweat. And then, just when you think it can't get worse, the wind picks up and starts tossing grit into your eyes like it holds a grudge. You stop only when you must. A river crossing, a bogged down wagon, a spooked herd. Even then, no one sits long. The trail boss is watching the sun, and every hour lost is another night further from the railhead. Sometimes thunder growls in the distance. You pray it stays there. Rain turns trails into sludge, and cattle into blind, stampeding fools. You've heard stories of herds spooked into rivers, drowning dozens. You've heard about riders too, ones who went under and never came up. When you ride night watch, the quiet is a different kind of cruel. Everything whispers. Grass, stars, hooves, your own thoughts. The herd shuffles in sleep, lowing like uneasy dreams. You hum a tune to calm them. Maybe a lullaby your mother once sang. Maybe just a nonsense melody that drifts with the wind. Sometimes you hear coyotes. Once, you hear something bigger. You grip the rifle tighter. Could be a cougar. Could be your imagination. Either way, you don't blink until the sun comes up. The chuck wagon always rolls behind, its iron pots clanging with every rut. Cookie's temper gets shorter the longer the ride goes. He's known to throw a ladle if you ask for seconds on beans, but he'll still wake up before you boil that bitter coffee. Say what you want. He's the glue holding the camp together. Dinner is never much. Beans, bacon, if it hasn't spoiled, hardtack you could break teeth on. But after a 14-hour ride, even mould tastes like a feast. You eat fast, wipe your mouth on your sleeve, and lay down where you are. Sometimes right in the dirt, hat over your face. Dreams full of rain that never comes. Your hands are cracked. Your back's a knot of pain. And your thighs feel like you've been hit with hammers. Still, you ride, because it's what you do, what you were hired for, what you'd do again, even if you swore last time was the last time. By the third week, even your bones feel sunburned. The trail doesn't just stretch on, it seeps in. Into your clothes, into your skin, into your very thoughts. You start dreaming about cattle, about dust, about beans that never quite soften, no matter how long they're boiled. You can't remember what fresh bread tastes like, or what it feels like to sit without swaying. The monotony becomes its own kind of torment. You count fence posts that aren't there. You name the cows out of boredom, then forget their names the next day. One longhorn stares at you every morning like it's judging your choices. Maybe it is. Maybe it knows something you don't. Sometimes you spot tracks in the dirt. Hoof prints too small to be cattle, too light to be horses. Antelope, maybe. Or wild horses. You hope it's not wolves. You've heard the stories. Packs shadowing the herd for days, picking off the calves at night. There's not much you can do about it. Keep the fire burning. Sleep with your rifle close. The days bake you dry, and the nights try to freeze what's left. You've seen Cookie pour hot coffee into a tin cup and have it ice over before he could drink it. Then 2 days later, you're sweating through your long johns again, cursing the heat. The weather on the plains makes no promises and keeps no rules. And then there are the river crossings, muddy, wide, unpredictable things. The cattle don't like them, and neither do you. The current can sweep a steer under in seconds, or a horse, or a man. You've seen saddlebags float downstream, and once, just once, a hat with no rider. Sometimes the chuck wagon gets stuck in the mire, and you all spend a half day dragging it free. Cookie curses with impressive variety. You'd laugh if your boots weren't full of water, but the worst part isn't the crossing, it's what comes after. Wet everything. Wet boots, wet clothes, wet coffee, and the smell. A mixture of cow, mud, and despair. Your horse, bless him, carries you through it all. He's leaner now. You both are. But he's sure-footed and smarter than most men. You've had long talks with him, usually around midnight when it's your turn to watch the herd, and you're too tired to think, but too awake to sleep. He never answers, which is just as well. You're not sure you'd want to hear what he has to say. Every few days you spot signs of other travellers. Wagon ruts, boot prints, ashes from old campfires. The west may be wide, but you're never the only one riding it. Sometimes you see smoke on the horizon and wonder who's out there. A family? Another herd? Something less friendly? You don't ride toward it to find out. There's a rhythm to the ride. Wake, ride, eat, ride, watch, sleep, repeat. But rhythm isn't peace. It's just survival in slow motion. When you finally roll into a railhead town, weeks from now, your body will keep riding for days afterward. You'll sway on your feet like the ground's still moving. And when someone asks what it was like out there, the ride, the trail, the dust, the cattle, you won't know how to answer. Not really, you'll shrug. Say something like, long. Because how do you explain the nothingness that nearly swallowed you whole? How do you describe the way the prairie wind sounds like it's calling your name? Or how the stars feel closer when you've been riding under them for weeks? You don't. You just nod, take your pay, and start thinking about the next ride. Because despite everything, the saws, the storms, the stampedes, part of you will want to go back out there. And that part, small though it is, will be the loudest voice in your head, always. You wake before dawn, boots still damp from yesterday's rain, joints aching like you've aged 20 years in a single night. But that's not what rouses you. It's the sound, low, rhythmic, almost like a drumbeat far off in the dark. A rumble. You bolt upright, and the pit in your stomach knows before your ears catch up. Stampede. The cattle are running. 2,000 longhorns thundering across the plains. Hooves carving dirt like it's paper. Horns goring the air. And you're barely awake, pulling on your hat, leaping onto your half-saddled horse with a rope in one hand and panic in the other. You don't ask what caused it. It could have been a coyote, a flash of lightning, a sneeze. The reason doesn't matter. Cattle don't need much to lose their minds. Just a whisper of danger, real or imagined. The point is, now they're moving. And if you don't move with them, they'll kill you. That's not an exaggeration. That's just basic math. Each longhorn weighs nearly half a ton. Multiply that by 2,000, and you're facing a wall of meat that could grind you into the earth like a stray nail under a hammer. You've seen it happen before. Cowboys caught in the chaos, trampled, broken, buried under hooves. No glory, just dust and death. You dig your spurs in. Your horse surges forward. You and a half-dozen other riders peel off from camp, circling the herd, yelling, waving your hats, doing anything you can to break their momentum. You try to ride the lead, as they say. Turn the front runners in on themselves so the herd spirals into its own orbit like a whirlpool. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Tonight it works. Barely. After a few blistered miles and a whole lot of yelling, the herd starts to slow. They loop back around into themselves. The chaos curls in like a lasso and collapses. Panting, ears twitching, the cattle finally stop. The silence after a stampede is deafening, and you don't feel brave. You feel lucky. This is the job. Not just driving cattle, but surviving them. Because here's what they don't tell you when you sign on. The greatest threat out here isn't bandits, or wolves, or thirst. It's the cows themselves. Longhorns look like walking furniture. Horns 5 feet across, spines like coat racks, slow and stupid in the heat. But when they spook, they move like lightning on 4 legs. And they don't swerve for you. There's a reason you always sleep lightly. A reason you keep one boot half on and your saddle nearby. You never know when a steer's going to plough through camp, or when the whole herd will decide en masse that the moon is evil and must be fled from at once. And it's not just stampedes. Oh no, there's the day-to-day brutality of moving them, watching for split hooves, swollen knees, sluggish stragglers who wander off into gullies. A longhorn that falls behind becomes a magnet for predators or just collapses in exhaustion. If you care, you try to lead it back. If you don't, you move on. You can't save them all, the ground doesn't help. It's cracked, rutted, sun-baked, or rain-slicked, depending on what indignity the sky's chosen. You ride for hours without a word, eyes always on the rear flank, watching for the one steer that's thinking about peeling off. And when you get to a river, Lord help you, cattle don't cross easy. They balk. They panic. One plunges in too fast. The next to hesitate. The fourth turns sideways. And suddenly they're piling up, drowning each other with hooves and horns. You scream and whip and pray, but the river doesn't care. Some make it, some don't. Even watering holes aren't safe. Especially not when another herd got there first and left the place a fetid soup. But cattle don't wait for clean water. If they smell it, they'll trample anything in their way. Horses, wagons, people, just to get there. You learn to ride ahead, scout the next creek or spring. You learn to build makeshift barriers, to funnel them in small groups. But even then, all it takes is one steer with too much attitude and not enough sense to kick off a melee. And if the cows don't get you, your horse might, or rather someone else's. There's always one greenhorn who doesn't tighten his cinch properly or loses control on a slope. A falling horse can break bones as easily as a bull. Injuries happen a lot. Broken arms, dislocated shoulders, concussions from being kicked in the head. You might laugh about it the next day, if you're lucky enough to still be breathing. There's no doctor out here. Maybe an old timer with some whiskey and a needle. Maybe not. Sometimes you ride wounded. You bind the leg, grit your teeth, and hope the next day's easier. It rarely is. It wasn't just the physical toll that made cattle so dangerous. It was the unpredictability. A steer could be perfectly docile for days, then go wild without warning. Maybe a thorn got lodged in its hoof. Maybe it caught wind of a cougar. Whatever it was, it turned a 2-ton lump of beef into a battering ram with horns. Cowboys carried ropes, sure, but good luck roping something already in full charge. Your best chance was to dodge and pray your horse was faster than the angry meat missile chasing you. Even after the drive, cattle work didn't get much safer. Branding days on the ranch were notoriously chaotic. The air reeked of burnt hair and sweat, and calves bellowed like banshees while being roped, flipped, and marked. You learned quickly where to stand and where not to. A wrong step meant a boot crushed under hoof, a shin bruised, or worse, a rib broken by a flailing leg. And yet, every spring and fall, you'd be back at it. Because branding wasn't just for show. It was how a ranch kept track of what belonged to whom. The more seasoned hand said you got used to the bruises. You didn't. You just stopped talking about them. And then there were the bulls. Not many on the trail, thank heavens. Bulls were usually kept for breeding, but the ones that showed up were built like brick ovens with tempers to match. You gave them space. Lots of it. Some herds only had a couple. Others had more. Too many, and the whole drive could turn into a dominance contest. Hooves flying, horns clashing, cowboys caught in the middle like unfortunate referees. Then there were night watches. You'd sit on your horse in the dark, rotating with the others, trying to stay awake. The rule was simple, no loud noises. Just gentle singing or humming to keep the herd calm. Too much silence and they'd get antsy. Too much movement and they'd scatter. So you sang, terribly, monotonously, the same song 100 times in a row. Get along, little doggies, over and over until your voice cracked and your horse looked ashamed of you. This was the job. Danger wasn't a one-time event. It was a constant companion. You learned to respect the herd not because you liked them, but because you wanted to stay alive. You gave them space. You watched their eyes. You never turned your back. And still, sometimes, it wasn't enough. You knew cowboys who lost fingers, toes, chunks of scalp. You knew one who got gored clean through the thigh and kept riding for another week before collapsing into fever. You heard about another trampled to death when his horse stumbled during a rainstorm. None of it made the papers. No one sent flowers. The herd kept moving. There was no heroism in it, no glory. Just a quiet, dangerous grind. And every day you survived was borrowed time. So the next time someone tells you they wish they could be a cowboy, you look at their soft hands, their shiny boots, their romantic little notion, and you laugh. Because you know the truth. Cowboys didn't die in gunfights. Not most of them. They died under hoofs. The sun's gone, and with it, the last hint of warmth. You're out on the plains now. Nothing but prairie grass, creaking saddle leather, and the creeping chill of dusk wrapping around your bones like a wet sheet. The fire hasn't been built yet. The cook's off gathering what twigs and dung he can find. And your boots? Still damp from crossing that last muddy creek? They'll stay that way through morning. Cold on the trail isn't like cold back east. It's got teeth. It gnaws at you slow. First your fingers go numb. Then your nose stings like it's been slapped by an icy ghost. Then your joints stiffen. Every movement creaking like ungreased hinges on a barn door. You roll out your blanket, the same one you've been using for the last 3 months, and drop it over the dirt. It's scratchy, smells like horse, and does very little to stop the shiver setting in. But it's all you've got. The fire finally catches. The boys gather close, shoulders hunched, faces blank, no one talking much. Nobody has the energy. Supper was beans again, the kind that turn to paste in your mouth and stick in your gut all night. Still better than going hungry. Someone passes around a tin mug of coffee. It's mostly ash and grit, but it's hot. And in that moment, that's good enough. When it's your turn for night watch, you don't argue. You just nod, stand up slow, and cinch your coat tight. Your horse looks just as miserable as you do, steam rising off his back in faint wisps as he snorts against the night. Together you patrol the dark. listening for hooves, watching for glints of eyes in the moonlight. You don't see anything, but you swear you hear something. A rustle, a grunt. Could be a wolf, could be your imagination, could be nothing. The prairie doesn't tell. You make it back to camp just before dawn. Hands stiff, teeth chattering, no one's up yet. You curl under your blanket again, hoping for 20 minutes of sleep before the cook starts clanging his infernal triangle. You dream of a fireplace? Or a proper bed? Or hell, just a wall to block the wind? But you get none of that. What you get is a boot in the ribs and the cook hollering, "Up! Beans are hot and we ride in 20. So you drag yourself upright, boots still wet, limbs still stiff, stomach already complaining. Every cowboy learns to live with the cold. Some learn to respect it. The dumb ones try to fight it. Those are the ones who lose toes. Or noses. Or worse, their nerve. Because out here, it's not just about staying warm. It's about staying awake. Staying alert. Staying alive. Winter on the plains comes hard and early. You've ridden through sleet so thick it might as well be knives. You've crossed rivers with your boots filled, and your heart thudding like it wanted out. Once, a boy on your crew tried to dry his socks too close to the fire. They caught. His boots were half melted by the time he noticed. He finished the ride barefoot. Blankets, coats, even gloves. They're not guarantees. They're hopes. The wind sneaks through every seam, every buttonhole. You wrap a scarf around your neck and nose until your breath turns it damp, then frozen. Your beard crusts with frost. Your eyelashes too. You blink and it crackles. One night you slept so close to the fire your hair caught. Only the smell of burning snapped you awake in time. That same night a horse collapsed from exhaustion. Too cold to keep standing, too tired to care. We shot him before dawn. Couldn't let him suffer. And we couldn't afford the wolves catching his scent and coming closer. Coyotes call at night. Low, long, mournful songs that rise over the plains like sirens. Some nights you talk back, whisper curses or bad jokes or sing half-remembered tunes from home just to drown them out. Other nights you just lie still and listen. Not much else to do. You're too cold to move, too tired to think, too far from anywhere for it to matter. Clothing wasn't always standard issue. You wore what you had. Some cowboys wore wool Union Army coats left over from the war. Others stitched together coats from buffalo hide, stiffer than hell but warm as sin. Gloves were precious. Lose one, and you'd be cutting fingers off a spare pair by spring. Socks were double layered if you were lucky, but the moment they got wet, and they always did, they were more curse than comfort. And don't get started on sleeping arrangements. A bedroll was a joke. It was canvas, usually mouldy, with a single blanket inside. Maybe two if you were flush. You'd lay it over the dirt, or the snow, or a slab of rock if that's what you had, and call it a night. Some men rigged up oilcloth lean-tos. Others slept in their saddles, huddled under brush or the lee side of their horses. Once, during a snow squall, you dug a pit in the snow and slept under your own coat like a burrowing badger. You woke up with your eyelids stuck shut from frost. The worst part? The cold didn't stop the ride. Cattle still moved. Bosses still barked. You still had to saddle up and point north. The trail didn't care if your fingers wouldn't close right, or your ears had gone white and waxy. You moved, or you lost your place. And no one wanted to be the man who froze and had to be hauled back under a tarp, stiff as fence post. You remember the first time you saw snow out on the plains? It was beautiful for a moment, quiet, drifting, peaceful. Then you realised it meant the horses would founder in drifts, the cattle would scatter, and every campfire would choke on the damp. Snow's a liar. It looks soft, but it buries you fast. You learned to pack smarter after that. Dried kindling kept under your saddle blanket. Extra socks tucked inside your bedroll. A flask, if you could sneak it. Not that whiskey helped much. It warmed your throat and numbed your fingers, but it made sleep deeper. Too deep, some found. They never woke. The cook tried to help where he could. Sometimes he'd warm rocks by the fire and hand them to whoever was on watch. You'd clutch them like gold, burning your palms just to feel something again. He made stews on the worst nights. Thick, greasy things that sat heavy and hot. You always thanked him, even if it tasted like mule sweat. Out here, even the sound of teeth chattering feels like company. Silence, after all, can be its own kind of cruelty. Sometimes the wind howls so sharp it sounds like it's laughing at you, a coyote's ghost trailing through the grass. Other times there's no sound at all, just the quiet suck of your boots in frozen mud, the creak of a saddle being shifted, the distant cough of a cow who's just as cold as you are. On the worst nights, the kind where even the fire seems to shiver, you find yourself longing for absurd things. A hot bath, a feather pillow, a woman's voice, even if she's angry. You remember the warmth of a hearth you haven't seen in years, and it makes the cold worse. Because out here, there's no soft escape. Just your blanket, your breath, and whatever grit keeps you from quitting. And so you endure, because enduring is all there is. You carry a gun, not because you want to use it, but because you might have to. It's heavy on your hip, a little awkward when you sleep, but you'd rather have it and never need it than wake up one night without it. The truth is, you haven't seen a bandit. Not yet, anyway. But the fear of them, the thought of them lurking somewhere in the dark, is as present as your saddle or your hat. Rustlers, outlaws, claim jumpers, they're all out here somewhere. Men who see your herd not as a long job, but as a quick payday. Some are desperate, some are mean, some are just bored and dangerous. You hear the stories whispered around the fire. How a camp in Wyoming got hit 2 nights running. How a lone rider never came back from scouting. How a group of masked men rode in just before dawn and shot the cook before he could even stand. It doesn't matter if the stories are true, they're true enough. So you watch. Every night, one of you is on guard. A fresh pot of coffee, a rifle across your knees, and eyes scanning the black beyond the firelight. It's the fire that gives you away. The flames flicker, casting long shadows that jump and twitch like they've got lives of their own. You stare at them until your mind starts playing tricks. Bushes look like crouched figures, and every coyote yelp makes your finger twitch on the trigger. You try not to think about it too much. You keep your head down, your gun clean, and your boots close. The trail boss tells you it's all part of the job. Just keep your eyes sharp and your ears sharper. But sometimes you wonder, sharp eyes won't stop a bullet, and ears won't hear what never makes a sound. The bandits you worry about most aren't always strangers. Sometimes it's the man riding next to you. You've heard of cowboys turning on each other, stealing pay, stealing horses, settling grudges in the worst way. One bad argument, one long night with too much whiskey, and suddenly there's one fewer man riding in the morning. Still, there's a strange comfort in the routine. You check the picket lines. You circle the herds. You mark the moon's rise and try to guess when your shift ends. You hum low to the cattle, hoping your voice keeps them calm and the night uneventful. Sometimes you make deals with the dark. Let me get through tonight, and I won't complain about the beans tomorrow. But complaining is half the job too. You grumble to Cookie, to your horse, to the sky, about the heat, the trail, the aches in your bones, and the smell of wet wool after rain, and you complain about the fear, even if you won't call it that. You say you're tired, not scared. You say you're careful, not jumpy. That's cowboy pride for you. The truth is, most nights are quiet. Nothing stirs, nothing comes. Just the wind rolling over the plains, the snorts and shuffles of sleeping cattle, and your own breath keeping time with the stars. You start to wonder if all this worry is for nothing. And then you remember, it only takes one night, one man with a fast horse and bad intentions, one mistake, 1 second. So you stay ready. There's a rhythm to vigilance. You learn to scan the horizon without really looking, to pick up strange sounds without seeming alert. You know how to roll out of your bedroll with a gun already in hand, and how to stay half awake through the stillest hours of the morning. You get used to the idea that you might not see the danger until it's already too late. Sometimes the worst kind of fear is the kind that never shows itself, the kind that lingers just out of sight, gnawing at your nerves without ever stepping into the light. It's like having a splinter in your thoughts, small but impossible to ignore. You joke about it with the other boys, but everyone knows it's not really funny. Not out here. That's why you never let your guard down. Not fully. Even in towns, when the ride's done and the herd is sold, you keep a hand near your belt. Saloons and streets can be just as dangerous as the open plains. A drunk with a grudge. A gambler with a losing streak. A marshal who's decided he doesn't like the look of you. No cattle to protect, but still plenty of ways to end up with a bullet in your side. And yet, for all this, for all the worry and the watching, being a cowboy isn't really about shootouts. Most of your time is spent doing the same thing, day in and day out, riding, herding, eating, sleeping, repeating. It's not glamour, it's grit. The gun at your side is a tool, not a symbol. And the fear? That's just part of the landscape. Still, sometimes the trail feels too quiet, like the wind's holding its breath, like the herd knows something you don't. You get that feeling in your gut, the one you can't shake. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just nerves. Or maybe, just once, the stories are about to be true. Sometimes, when the wind dies down and the fire burns low, you hear a noise that doesn't quite belong. A footstep, a creak of leather, the shuffle of something just outside the edge of sight. You sit still, barely breathing, hand curled around your revolver beneath the blanket. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just a coyote sniffing at the beans. But maybe it's not. You don't want to find out the hard way. So you wait, straining to listen, eyes flicking between shadows. Minutes pass like hours. And then nothing. Just the sound of someone snoring and the faint pop of wood in the coals. You let out the breath you'd been holding and shift on your bedroll, though sleep won't come easy now. That's the thing about fear out here. It doesn't need a reason. It just needs the dark and the chance. By morning, you feel like you've aged a week, and no one else even noticed. That's the job. You carry your worries quiet, buried under dust and routine, because out here, silence is safer than honesty. And paranoia, more often than not, keeps you breathing. And if, someday, you do see a real bandit, you'll probably be too tired to react fast enough. That's the cruelest part. All this tension, all these sleepless nights. And when the moment finally comes, it's over before you can think. Maybe your shot lands, maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're the one riding away, maybe not. But until then, you ride on, you scan the horizon, you check your revolver, you drink your coffee, black as tar and twice as bitter. And you remind yourself, it's not the bullets that break most cowboys, it's the waiting. So you wait, eyes open, saddle ready, always listening. Because even if the bandits never come, you're never entirely sure they won't. You don't ride for the money. That much becomes clear right quick. After weeks of blistering sun, saddle sores, snake scares, stampedes and beans that taste like campfire and despair, you finally roll into the railhead. You've made it. The herd's delivered. The trail boss signs the papers, the cows are corralled, and just like that, it's over. Then comes payday. And if you're lucky, you're handed $25, maybe $30. A whole month's work, danger, weather, boredom, bruises, boiled down to a few crumpled bills that don't even cover a new pair of boots. You tuck it in your pocket and try not to think too hard about what that says about your worth. The truth is, cowboys weren't paid handsomely. Most earned about $1 a day, and even that was inconsistent. Some months paid out better, others worse. You'd think driving thousands of cattle across hundreds of miles through treacherous terrain would be worth a handsome sum. But you'd be wrong. The ranchers made their profits on volume, not generosity. And you? You were just part of the machinery, expected to eat dust, endure storms, and keep the herd moving without too much complaint. And if you did complain, well, you could be replaced. There was always someone younger, hungrier, more desperate than you, willing to sleep on rocks and chase cows for a pittance. Cowboys were never rare, at least not the kind who'd sign up for misery without asking too many questions. You were one of many, and one mistake could send you packing. Sometimes you'd get a bonus if the drive went smooth, and the herd didn't lose too many head. Other times you'd lose out entirely if a deal went sour or the cattle sold low. It all depended on the market, something you had no say in and barely understood. You worked like a mule, but the pay came like a whisper. Quiet, fleeting, and almost always disappointing. So, where did the hard-earned cash go? Well, first to your gear. That saddle of yours probably belonged to someone else first. Your boots, one step from falling apart. The hat's the only thing that might survive another season, but only because you sleep with it pulled over your eyes to block the sun. A new pair of gloves? That's half your pay. A decent coat for cold nights? That's the rest. You spend your money before you even get it, patching up your kit, replacing what's broken, or sending a few coins to family if there's any to spare. There's no saving. There's just surviving until the next ride. And still, you sign up again. Maybe it's habit, maybe it's pride, maybe it's that stubborn streak in your bones that tells you, even when your body aches and your stomach's empty, that you were made for this. Or maybe it's because there's nothing else. The towns don't want you, not a drifter with calloused hands and dust in your teeth. You're too rough for polite company, too poor to settle down, and too restless to stay put. Some cowboys do move on. They become ranch hands, marry, buy a little land if they're lucky. But most keep drifting. From one drive to the next, from Texas to Kansas to Wyoming and back again. Chasing cattle, chasing money, chasing a version of life that never seems to arrive. It's not just the pay that's poor, it's the treatment too. You're expected to be tough, quiet, and obedient. The trail boss doesn't want opinions. He wants results. If you fall behind, you're yelled at. If you speak up, you're ignored. If you get sick, well, best not to. There's no doctor, and no time to wait on you. Ride or be left behind. Sleeping on the ground every night, eating the same beans until your dreams start tasting like them, riding for hours without a word spoken, it wears on you. You begin to feel like the cattle you drive, herded, numbered, pointed in a direction without ever knowing the why. And yet, you keep going. There's a strange kind of loyalty among cowboys. Not to the rancher, not to the job, but to each other. You watch your partner's back, share your last biscuit, help pull someone from a bad fall. When the thunder cracks and the herd starts to run, you don't think twice. You spur your horse and ride into chaos to keep your crew safe. That bond is stronger than the paycheck, maybe stronger than reason. Even so, there's always the knowledge that you're expendable, that this job will chew you up and move on, that someday your horse will go lame, your reflexes will slow, and there'll be no place left for you on the trail. No pension, no thanks, no fond farewell. Just the next man in line taking your spot in the saddle. Some ranchers paid in scrip. Basically fancy IOUs only good at the company store. You'd ride all season thinking you were owed $50, only to find out you could spend it on marked up boots and stale tobacco, but not a penny more. And forget about sending money home. That script didn't travel and neither did you. And yet, you still ride. Why? Maybe it's the horizon. Maybe it's the silence of the plains, the weight of the stars, the simple satisfaction of a day's ride done. Maybe it's that moment when you lead the herd across a river at dawn, mist rising, water glinting like firelight, and for just a breath, it feels like you're part of something grand. Or maybe it's just stubbornness, the cowboy's curse. There's no glory here, no songs sung about you, no riches waiting at the end of the trail, just worn-out gear, a sunburn that never fades, and a back that aches before you're even 30. But there's honesty in it, in the dust, in the effort, in the scars. It's a hard life, but it's yours. And sometimes that's enough. Some cowboys drift into town after a drive and spend their whole pay in a night. Drinks, cards, maybe a bath and a bed if they're feeling civilized. Others hoard their coins, dreaming of buying a little place one day, even if that day never comes. But most spend like they live, a little reckless, a little tired, and never quite certain if tomorrow will be easier or worse. The work is seasonal. Spring drives, fall roundups, a few weeks in between to rest, maybe fix some fences or shoe some horses. But the cycle always comes back around. And each time you're a little older, a little wearier, and a little less surprised by how little has changed. You watch as new riders join the crew, young, cocky, loud, just like you once were. They learn quick. The trail doesn't tolerate slow learners. You nod at them from under your hat, knowing full well they'll be just like you in a few seasons. Quieter, harder, and still somehow hoping that next time will be different. And so the days blend. You ride, you eat, you sleep, And then you ride again. The pay never changes. The towns don't grow kinder. But there's something in the rhythm of it all. The creak of saddle leather at dawn. The shared curse when the herd spooks. The rare laugh when someone actually tells a joke that lands. It becomes your world. You don't stay for the pay. You stay for the story, even if no one ever hears it. You stay because when your boots hit the dust and your horse shifts beneath you, the world makes a kind of sense. You stay because you're a cowboy, not in name, not in legend, but in truth. Poorly paid, often forgotten, and still always riding, you find comfort in the smallest things. A worn-out song, a rock in your pocket that fits just right in your hand, the whistle of the wind through the grass that reminds you, faintly, of someone's voice. Though whose, you're not sure anymore. It's not that cowboy life offers nothing good. It's that the good is rare, scattered, like coins dropped in dust. You learn to treasure those coins, to make them shine in memory far brighter than they ever were in the moment. Maybe it starts with the horse. Yours isn't much to look at. All ribs and dust and a limp in the right foreleg when the weather shifts. But you know her rhythms. She knows yours. A nudge of the heel means move. A tap on the neck means hush. When the herd panics in the night and you're jolted from half sleep, it's her weight beneath you that steadies the world. She's the closest thing to a friend most days. You talk to her more than you talk to the others. Sometimes, when your throat is dry and you've gone too many hours without a word, your voice cracks when you say her name. That's all right. She never corrects you. Then there's the cook. Cranky old man, missing 3 teeth. Smells like bacon grease and stale tobacco. But he's the closest thing to a mother you'll have out here. He clatters pans before sunrise, like he's mad at the moon. But every once in a while, he slips an extra biscuit onto your plate. Doesn't say a word about it, doesn't need to. You get to know the sound of the dinner bell. It's not a bell so much as a triangle, rusted and bent, but when it rings you move. Not because you're hungry, though you are, but because it means company, noise, something different from the endless shuffling of hooves and thoughts. It means a break, a small mercy. Some nights, when the cattle are calm and the air's not too cold, someone pulls out a harmonica. You didn't know it was in their kit. They play slow, real slow, like they're scared the tune will blow away on the wind. A few men hum along. No one sings. The fire crackles like it's listening. You lie back and look up. There are more stars than you remembered existed. You try to count them. You never finish. That's another thing. The sky. It's not a comfort, exactly. Not always. Sometimes it presses down on you, big and cold and full of nothing. But other times, when the moon's just right, or a cloud drifts in soft, like cotton, it feels like company. A silent one, sure, but company nonetheless. You whittle sometimes. Not much. You're not an artist. But you'll take a bit of wood from a fence post or a branch snapped off a mesquite and carve your name. Or not your name. Maybe just a mark, a shape. Something that says, I was here in a world that forgets you real quick. There's a piece of fence near the North Range, out past the dry creek bed, with nearly every cowboy's name on it. Some carved with care, others just scratched in with a nail. A few names have been crossed out. The men gone, their stories ended or moved along. No one talks about those names, but you look at them when you pass and you wonder where they went. One of the boys in the crew, skinny, can't be more than 15, keeps a journal. You saw it once when you were sharing watch. He scribbles in it at night with a nub of pencil, hunched over like a preacher in prayer. You didn't ask what he writes. He didn't offer. But you wonder if it's about home, or if he even remembers it. You don't write, never much took to it, but you keep things. A button from a coat that got torn in a storm, a scrap of cloth with someone's initials, a bullet that misfired and didn't kill you. You don't know why you keep them. They don't mean much to anyone else, but they're anchors, little ones, to remind you that not everything gets blown away. The trail doesn't offer luxury. It barely offers survival. But every so often, a moment slips through, like a bit of gold in river silt, and you hold on. Like when someone tells a joke that actually makes you laugh. Not just a snort or a breath, but a real laugh. The kind that surprises you because you'd forgotten the sound. Or when Cookie pulls out a tin of peaches, how he got it, no one knows, and passes it around. You get 2 slices. Sticky, sweet, like syrup from heaven. You don't ask for more. You just let the flavour linger, memorising it like scripture. Or when you see a hawk circling above the herd, and you follow it with your eyes until it disappears. Something about that bird, free, graceful, alone, makes your chest ache in a way you can't name. There's a rhythm to the days. Misery, routine, small grace, repeat. The cows don't care if you're tired. The sun doesn't wait for you to be ready. But you learn to find moments inside the grind. You talk to yourself more than you'd admit. Out loud sometimes. The others pretend not to notice. You pretend not to care. It helps. When the wind's just right, it carries the scent of creosote or distant rain, and it reminds you that the world's bigger than the herd, and the fire, and the bruises on your thighs. It smells like change. Like maybe, someday, you'll do something else. Something that doesn't involve rawhide and bad coffee. You know it's a lie, but it's a sweet one. Sometimes you dream of a porch. A real one. Wood planks that don't creak. A rocking chair. Maybe a dog lying beside you. You dream of stew in a proper bowl. Of boots that aren't cracked. Of a face you love that doesn't disappear with the sunrise. Then the dream fades. The sun's up. The herd's moving. You saddle up and ride. And still, there are good things. A new shirt, stiff and strange but clean. A letter from someone who spelled your name wrong but cared enough to write. A bath in a stream when the water's not too cold and no one else is around. Even your own body can surprise you. A day when your back doesn't hurt as much. A night when your cough stays gone. A morning when your hands are steady. You look for these things. You collect them. You let them keep you going. One night, a storm rolls in. Sudden, loud, mean. Lightning cracks like a whip, and the herd shudders. You and the others ride in circles around him, shouting, singing, whatever it takes to keep them calm. When it passes, soaked and shaking, you lie on the ground, too tired to move. The earth is cold and wet, but you're alive. And someone, somewhere, says, hell of a thing, and you all laugh, because what else can you do? You fall asleep to the smell of wet leather and burned beans and the faintest hint of sage. That's life out here. Not a tale of glory, not a poem. Just a series of little comforts strung together on a rope of exhaustion and grit. And yet, for all the misery, you stay. Not because you have to. Not entirely. But because you've learned to find beauty in broken places. Peace in the pause between disasters. Meaning in the mundane. One day you'll be too old for this. Your knees will give. Your hands will shake. You'll lie on a cot and think of all the things you meant to do. But you'll remember this: the night under the stars, the coffee with too much grit, the way your horse leaned into you when you fell asleep standing up. You'll remember, and it'll matter. Maybe one day they'll write books about you. Not with your name, not with the truth, but close enough. They'll dress it up, of course. The cowboy who rode into town, cleaned up the streets, rode off into the sunset. But the real story? It's quieter. It's harder. It's lonelier. And it matters, even if nobody remembers. The herd is gone, driven north, handed over at the railhead, loaded into boxcars like sacks of grain. You've spent months trailing them across sun-scorched plains, and through nights so cold your joints ached like old hinges. Now they're someone else's concern. Meat on the hoof, bound for markets you'll never see and tables you'll never sit at. All that remains of them is the scent in your clothes and a ghost herd lowing somewhere in your mind. You dismount in a town that smells of horses and fresh lumber. The buildings are sharp-cornered and new, but the faces are tired. Nobody greets you. Nobody cares. You tie your horse and stretch your back. It pops in 3 places. And you wonder when you started walking like a man twice your age. Your first stop is the saloon. Not because you're thirsty exactly, more because it's the closest thing to familiar. Inside, it's half full. A card game in the back. 2 men arguing softly over who owes whom. A girl at the piano playing a tune that sounds like it's made of dust and regret. You order coffee. You could have asked for whiskey, but you know how that ends. Sore knuckles, an empty pocket, and waking up face first in an alley. It's quieter than you remember. No trail hands laughing too loud. No barkeep trading jokes with regulars. Just the slow shuffle of a broom and the tired clink of glass. You drink your coffee and let the warmth settle in your chest. It's not good coffee, but it's hot and bitter. The 2 things it needs to be. You catch your reflection in the bar mirror and hardly recognize the man staring back. Your shirt is bleached by sun and sweat. Your beard is starting to grey. You're thinner than you remember, like the trail stripped away everything it didn't think you needed. Maybe it did. Even your hat sits different, more slumped, as if it too has given up on standing tall. Later you try to get a room. The woman behind the desk doesn't ask your name, just how many nights, and whether you'll be paying in coin or promise. You choose coin. You've got enough for a few days, maybe longer if you skip dinner, which, given your trail appetite, might be the plan anyway. Your room is up a narrow staircase, and the bed feels too soft. Your body's forgotten how to sleep without dirt under your spine. The pillow smells like laundry soap instead of horse. It's unsettling. You lie there in the dim and listen. Towns breathe differently than the trail. There's no coyote yelp, no breeze in the mesquite, no clatter of restless hooves. Just creaking boards, muffled laughter, and the clink of silverware in the dining room below. Civilization, they call it. Doesn't feel like it. The next morning you wake early anyway. Habit. No triangle clang from cookie, but your eyes snap open just the same. You dress slowly. Your hands don't move as quick as they used to. Your left knee clicks when it bends. You head out and wander. The streets are still sleepy, save for a boy sweeping dust off the wooden walkway, as if the town's trying to deny where it came from. You stop by the blacksmith. He's hammering a new shoe, the sound clean and sharp. He doesn't look up. You're just another trail ghost passing through. That suits you fine. You nod. He doesn't nod back. Respect's harder to come by when you don't have a badge or a name folks remember. In the days that follow, the rhythm of town life starts to press against you. You try to make yourself small. A seat at the end of the bar, a quiet nod at the mercantile. But still, you feel like a coin that's rolled into the wrong pocket. Townsfolk don't trust men with calloused hands and distant stares. They can't tell if you're a danger or just damaged. You wonder if you even know the difference anymore. You consider looking for work. A livery stable needs help mucking stalls. There's a sign at the freight office for a guard to ride shotgun on a coach run west. A ranch handspot just outside of town. None of it pays well. None of it calls to you. You were built for motion, for trail dust and open space, not fences and storefronts. Some men plant roots. Others drift like tumbleweed. You've long since stopped pretending you're the former. You kill time the way cowboys do. You sit. You whittle. You play a hand or two of cards. Lose more than you win, then fold before it gets ugly. You nurse cheap coffee and cheaper stew, spooning it slow as if each bite deserves thought. You watch men lie to each other and wonder if that's just how folks pass the time when there's no horizon to chase. Sometimes you ride out just a few miles, not far, just enough to feel the dirt stretch under your horse again. You listen to the creak of the saddle and the rustle of brush. It's not a trail ride, not really. It's a memory, reenacted. The horse knows the feeling too. Her ears twitch forward as if listening for cows that aren't there. You meet another cowboy one morning, fresh off a different drive. His face is windburned, eyes squinting even indoors. You nod, he nods. Nothing more needs saying. You both know the same truths about cold beans and hot tempers, stampedes in the night, and the ache behind your knees after a long day in the saddle. It's a brotherhood with no handshakes and no dues, just dust and respect. At night, you think about writing a letter. To who, though? Maybe your brother back east, if he's still alive. Maybe the girl who used to wait for you. But what would you say? I herded cows across hell and back. The beans were cold, the days were long, and no one said thank you. Doesn't seem worth the stamp. The money runs out faster than expected. It always does. That new shirt? Already fraying at the cuffs. That bath? A memory now. You stretch what you've got. Maybe a tin of beans, a bit of jerky, a crust of stale bread you don't ask too many questions about. You'd almost prefer trail meals. At least those had purpose. You pawn your spare boots. You skip lunch. You tell yourself you're not hungry. You tighten your belt another notch and call it thrift. But the truth is, towns don't feed the forgotten. One evening, just before dusk, you find yourself standing by the rail line, watching the trains. You don't know where they're going. Doesn't matter. Some part of you wonders what it'd be like to climb aboard and vanish across the country, disappear into another job, another trail, another version of yourself. But you don't. You just stand there, like a man staring at the ocean and remembering a ship he missed. And when you finally decide to move on, because you will, no one stops you. The saloon girl doesn't wave. The stable boy just takes the coin. The general store doesn't offer credit. You leave like you came in, with nothing promised, nothing owed. You ride out before sunrise. The town is still. The sky is grey with sleep, and as your horse picks up her pace, you don't look back. Cowboys don't say goodbye. They just disappear into the morning. Because in the end, that's what you were built for. Not a name, not a place. Just the ride.